Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really excited to be here. We appreciate you being able to come see us on a Sunday night. So we're going to have some good info for you tonight. My name is Catherine. I am a current student in William and Mary, and I'm one of the co-hosts tonight, along with Michelle, who is also a student at William and Mary. And we're really lucky tonight to have Dean Endy, who is one of our Office of Career Services deans. He's a stalwart at the school. So he's going to be giving us about a 20-minute presentation, 25 minutes about career services and career trajectory at William and Mary. This webinar is going to be recorded. So just wanted to let you guys know that ahead of time. We will be taking questions after the presentation. So if you have questions for myself, Michelle, or Dean Endy after the presentation, you can either pop those in the chat whenever you want, or you are welcome to save those for the end. And we will get to all of those at the end. But other than that, I think we're ready for you to go ahead and get us started, Dean Endy.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. And it's great to have everybody here tonight. And as Catherine said, thanks for being here on a Sunday. There are a lot of other things I'm sure all of you could be doing, but I'm glad that you're spending this time with us. So as Catherine mentioned, I'm Mike Endy, and I'm the Associate Dean for Career Services, and I head up the Office of Career Services. I'm finishing up my 10th year here at William and Mary. Before that, I spent 6 years at another law school in an identical position. I was a former practicing lawyer up in New York. I spent 12 years practicing with a firm, about 150 lawyers, and I was a partner there, and I specialized in corporate transactional matters and regulatory and compliance matters for banks and financial services institutions. And in between practicing and getting into career services, I was a professional legal recruiter for several years. So from my vantage point, I've seen careers from a number of different perspectives, which definitely informs the way we operate in our office. And what I'm going to do tonight is talk to you a little bit about the services that we provide, and hopefully answer any questions you have, and hopefully there will be many. So just to get things rolling, I'll go through tonight's agenda, things we're going to cover. First, we're going to talk about employment highlights for the classes of 2022 and 2023. I think it's important in terms of setting a tone to understand where our students are going and where our graduates are going and what kind of opportunities are available for you. Second, we're going to talk to you about the different career services that are available to you as 1Ls, including career advising, workshops and programs, summer internship opportunities, and access to various resources. We're going to talk about our new leadership and professional development class, which we rolled out this year for the first time with our 1Ls. And of course, we'll leave plenty of time to answer your questions. So getting things rolling, I want to talk to you for a couple of minutes about employment for our classes of 2022 and 2023. The numbers that I'm going to talk to you about are numbers that we're really proud of, and I think really highlight the success that our students and graduates are having, and hopefully that'll be an indication to you of the kind of success you can experience when you come here to William and Mary. So as you'll see on our screen, I've got the class of 2022 on the left, the class of 2023 on the right. For the class of 2022, we report based on 10 months after graduation, and our cutoff date for employment for measuring that is March 15th, so this coming Wednesday. And then we will report our numbers for the class of 2022 to the American Bar Association the first week in April. Right now, more than 90% of the graduates in that class are employed in full-time long-term jobs where bar passage is required or a JD is an advantage. And you might hear some schools refer to that as sort of the gold standard of employment when it comes to a school's employment numbers. So we're over 90% in that category. And there are other graduates who are not employed, but are doing other things. So for example, we have a number of graduates in this class that while they're not working, they are currently in advanced degree programs, such as LLM or PhD programs that they think are going to further their careers by participating in those programs. Of note, one of the things I talk to students about all the time is we are not a regional school. We are very much a national school in terms of where our students come from, but also where our students go after graduation. And that is really evident from our class of 22, where we have graduates who have taken positions in 32 different states plus DC, which is a pretty outstanding range for our graduates. Typically, that number is about 25 states in DC, but one of the things that we've noticed with the advent of what's called the Uniform Bar Exam, which allows you to waive into a number of different states if you take the Uniform Bar, that it gives our graduates a lot more portability, so more of them are taking positions in other parts of the country. For our class of 2023, our 3Ls, we've been just started surveying them, and we've already confirmed employment for 70% of the class. And that's a pretty significant number for us. Typically at graduation, for the last several years, we have had approximately 62 to 63% of our classes employed at that time. So we are already at approximately 70% of the 3L class. And for the class of 2022, 3/4 of the class had their jobs at graduation. So those are really outstanding numbers. And I'd like my office to be able to take some of the credit for that. But quite honestly, the credit really goes to the students and graduates in those classes who work extremely hard and are really committed to their future and really put the pedal to the metal when it comes to searching for jobs that will benefit them. So moving on, I want to talk to you about some career key aspects of career counseling and career services at William & Mary. Specifically, I want to focus first on individual career advising, because this is really a hallmark of what we do with our students. So career advising with the 1Ls typically begins around October 1st. We want to give you about 6 weeks or so specifically to focus on just being a law student. Even if you have a lot of professional experience, or maybe you've been in other advanced degree programs, going to law school is a very different experience. And there's nothing that should be taking place in those first 6 weeks regarding job searching that should interfere with your ability to be a good law student. So that's why we'll push everything off until October 1st. In advance of that, we will be meeting with you in large and small groups to go through a number of different things to help you prepare for your job search. But October 1st is when we'll start the individual career advising. You'll have the opportunity to work directly with one of our career advisors. It could be me or one of the other advisors in the office, all of whom have extensive experience in the legal profession and extensive experience in career advising. The focus is on you, and that's a really important thing that I want to mention, because our approach here is not a cookie cutter approach where we're going to treat all of you the same. There might be some significant consistencies in the advice that we give you or the resources that we mention, but the focus is always going to be on you as an individual, because each of you is coming into law school with different sets of experiences, skills, and goals, and we want to make sure that we are tailoring our advice to you based on the things that you really want to do and the things that you think are going to be important. So in that respect, we're going to focus on your short and long-term goals. So in terms of short-term goals, we'll focus on what you might want to do for that first summer in between your 1L and 2L years that will launch you in terms of your career. We'll talk to you about your preferences. Are there particular areas of practice that you have an interest in, particular types of employers you want to work for, or even geographic considerations that you need to take into account while you're searching for a job? We'll focus on developing for each of you a search and plan, a strategy for a job search and a plan of action that will be unique to you. And then we'll also work with you on making sure you understand all the timelines and deadlines that are going to be critical for you in terms of both a summer job search and for a long-term postgraduate job search. We also offer quite a variety of workshops and programs throughout the year, and I want to highlight a few of them for you. So first of all, I mentioned that before we start the one-on-one advising, we will be meeting with you to bring you some content that will help you with your job search. Most significantly, we partner with our legal writing faculty to offer resume writing, cover letter writing, and interview skills workshops in your 1L legal practice classes. This means you do not have to find separate time for these classes. We integrate them into the curriculum for your legal writing courses. And that gives us an opportunity to work with you in much smaller groups with respect to providing the information you need in terms of writing an excellent resume or cover letter, and more importantly, the interview skills. What we found by doing this, and we've been doing this now for the last 9 years, is that the feedback we get from employers regarding the quality of what they see from William & Mary students is far beyond what they see in terms of the quality from students at other schools. And again, that is due primarily to our ability to work with you in smaller groups on your resume, cover letter, and interview skills. We have an annual 1L alumni mock interview program that will take place either the last Friday of January or the first Friday in February. And that program matches every 1L with a member of our alumni community for a 30-minute mock interview. For many of you, it may be the first interview experience you've ever had. For others who've had a lot of interview experience, you might find that interviewing for a job in the legal profession might be very different than anything you've experienced. So this is a good opportunity before real interviews start to sort of dip your toe in the water and make sure that your skills are really up to snuff when it comes to interviewing. And it's also a great way to connect with members of our alumni community. Many of our students have reported that they've actually gotten their 1L summer jobs as a result of the connection that they made through the mock interview program. But it also could be somebody who becomes a lifelong mentor for you. And that's another important aspect of the program. We also have a lot of career and professional development related programs throughout the course of the year. So for example, there might be programs on practicing in criminal law, or focusing more on public service than on private practice. So throughout the course of the year, our goal is to introduce you to a variety of practice areas and practice locations, or not locations, but even types. So for example, if you have an interest in government or an interest in more in the public sector, there might be programs that are geared specifically towards you, but there will also be plenty of programs that are focused more on private practice. And we try and vary those programs throughout the year and bring alumni in so that you can have some more networking opportunities. Now, this is typically where our 1Ls work. And this graphic is intended to indicate the buckets where our 1Ls will find jobs, and the size of the box is an indication of the percentage of graduates that tend to, or students that tend to go into these buckets. What you'll see on the left-hand side for 1L summer, it is very typical for 1Ls, and not just at William & Mary, but at law schools across the country, to work in the public sector. And that would be with government agencies on the federal, state, and local level, public interest organizations, as well as with the members of the judiciary. We have a very significant number of our students during 1L summer who will go work with federal and state judges across the country. Approximately 2/3 of all 1Ls will be on the left-hand side of that graphic in the government, public interest, and judicial sectors. On the right-hand side, private practice are law firms. Most law firms that hire 1Ls are typically the smaller law firms. If you're thinking about big law and you know the bigger firms in the country, they typically do not hire 1Ls except through diversity pipeline programs, even though there are some firms that are expanding their 1L hiring now. But private practice still is a generally small percentage of the students who will go to work in those types of employers for the first summer. Business would be like your in-house counsel. So if a corporate law department, so you just name a corporation, if they have to have in-house counsel, that's what we're talking about in business. But business could also be what we call like the JD Advantage positions or JD adjacent, where they don't necessarily require somebody that has a JD, but you can still get great experience that will really benefit you in terms of your future career. And then academia, that could be working for a law school, a university in some type of capacity. We have a number of students who will spend the summer working as faculty research assistants or working for one of our many clinics. But you could also work for the in-house counsel office at a law school or a college. So for example, William & Mary's Office of General Counsel often hires students to serve as interns during 1L summer. So in terms of the job opportunities, I'll talk to you about the resources that are available to you in terms of how to find them. So first thing I want to mention is that we have an annual government and public interest interview program, which takes place in early February every year. We partner with 2 other area law schools on that program. And this past year, we had 115 employers participating in that program. This program is currently all virtual, and it's actually been a change that's really benefited our students. Before, it used to be an in-person only program, and pretty much we were limited to employers that were based in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. But because we're now doing this program virtually, we've expanded the program to include employers all over the country. So we've had employers in New York, New Jersey, North Carolina, Tennessee, and some other locations participate in this program each of the last 2 years. Even if you do not have a long-term interest in working in the public sector, This program is a fantastic program to find your 1L summer job. And even if you are focusing more on the public sector longer term, it's a phenomenal program for those of you who are thinking about doing that kind of work in both the 2L year and 3L year in terms of an opportunity for postgraduate employment. Again, 115 employers that participated this year. I think we had about 120 William & Mary students participate in a total of about 450 interviews for that program this year, which is a phenomenal result for us. And many of the students got on-the-spot offers or offers within a matter of a couple of days of that program. We also have a smaller spring on-campus interview and resume forward program. On-campus it's not that it's non-existent. It's not as robust as it once was because employers have figured out that it's just as easy, if not easier, for them to interview virtually. But we still do have a program in the spring for our 1Ls, and a couple of the bigger area law firms will come and recruit during that program, as well as some government agencies and public interest organizations. We also use a system called Simplicity. Some of you may be familiar with Simplicity from your undergraduate days, or you may have used a similar program like Handshake. This is our job posting database where we have hundreds of positions available for 1Ls, 2Ls, 3Ls, and alumni. I think at our peak a couple of weeks ago, we had over 200 1L jobs that were posted in our Simplicity system. And they're not just limited to the Virginia, DC, Maryland area. A lot of these positions are positions that are being posted nationwide. So while the predominant number of jobs posted in that system are local, you still have opportunities to look at things on a more nationwide basis. Networking is also something that we really emphasize, and I know that that can be a scary concept for a lot of people, but networking is really a critical component of every job search. Our estimates are that only about a quarter of all jobs out there are actually posted, and that the 75% of all other jobs come as a result of some form of networking, or just being in the right place at the right time, or or having your name referred to somebody else as a result of building a relationship. So we will emphasize pretty significantly networking, and we will help you develop a networking plan that works for you, because you recognize that each of you will have a different approach towards networking. We also now have, well, I shouldn't say now, but for those of you who are thinking about big law, we have our early summer and fall interview and resume programs for 2L summer. When we did this program last year, that line said late summer and fall, but is now early summer, because many of the bigger firms in the country are starting to recruit earlier and earlier and earlier, as early as May and June of 1L year. And so we have moved our programs up by a couple of weeks so that these interview programs will start in July to give all our students who are interested in this cohort of employers the best opportunity for success. So we will have our virtual and our on-campus interview programs that will start that last week in July and run all the way into October, depending on the employers that we have participating. And then we also participate in a number of national and regional consortia interview programs. So one specific example I'll give you, actually I'll give you two specific examples. One is called the Southeastern Minority Job Fair, and that's Southeastern only in terms of the identity of the schools that participate. There are about 40 schools ranging from Virginia down to Texas that participate in this program, but it is very much a national program in terms of the employers that participate. It's usually about 200 of the largest law firms and some of the larger government agencies that participate in this program. And then last year, we had a significant increase in the number of public defenders across the country that participated. So for students who might be interested in working for a public defender at another part of the country, this program might be a real advantage for you. Another national program I wanted to mention, for those of you who have engineering or life sciences backgrounds, we participate in something called the Loyola Patent Law Interview Program, which takes place in Chicago in the middle of July every year. And it brings in, on a nationwide basis, firms that have patent practices. And so those of you who have that background, who are thinking that you're interested in patent law, can participate in that program after your 1L year and after your 2L year as well. So we'll talk for a couple of minutes about resources that we have available to you. And I want to focus specifically on three. And we have dozens of online and print resources available, but the three that I want to mention that are most important are 3 internal resources. There are plenty of external resources in terms of job search boards and other ways to conduct research on legal employers. And you'll learn about those when you get into William & Mary, but I want to focus tonight on 3. The first is TWEN, which is short for the Thomson West Education Network. So some of you will become very familiar with Westlaw. Westlaw is owned by Thomson Reuters, and TWEN is another product of Thomson. Second is our summer jobs list, and I'll tell you what that is in a couple of minutes. And the last is what's known as our Tuesday email. So first I want to focus on TWEN, and this is a screenshot of the TWEN homepage. Once you have access to your Westlaw account, you will be able to sign up for access to our TWEN page. And what this is the place where we host all of our resources for our students. You can see on the left-hand side is the navigation, and there is a 1L Summer Job Search tab. If you click on that, there are a whole bunch of resources related to the 1L Summer Job Search. Same with 2L and 3L. If you're interested in clerking for a judge after graduation, we have a whole section on judicial clerkships. We have a whole section on resumes, cover letters, et cetera, and then on interviewing and networking. So this is a resource that you will become intimately familiar with very early on. And you'll have access to it literally the middle of orientation week if you signed up for your Westlaw account. And we encourage students, even before you start to meet with us one-on-one, to start taking advantage of these resources, because it might make our first advising appointment with you a little bit more meaningful because you're familiar with some of the resources that we're going to talk about. Next is what we call our summer jobs list. And what we do is we survey our 1Ls and 2Ls about which summer jobs they have. And assuming they give us permission to include that information in the spreadsheet, we update this spreadsheet accordingly. And so this one, the screenshot I have here is not updated. It's for our most recent class. But we have information on 1L summer jobs going back to 2009 and information on 2L summer jobs going back to 2012. This is a resource that is hosted on our TWEN site. You can download it as an Excel file, and you can search for positions based on the type of employer, the location, what the source of the job was. I have blacked out here, redacted the names of the individuals who hold those jobs, but if their names are on this list, it's an indication that they've given us permission to make that information public, and they anticipate that they will be contacted by students who are looking to get some information on what it may have been like to work for one of these organizations, how they got the job, things that they might recommend that you include in a cover letter or in an interview. But you will have access to this early on once you have access to your Westlaw account. The last is our Tuesday email. So every Tuesday, without fail, we will send out separate email newsletters to each of the 1L, 2L, and 3L classes. So, and these are intended to provide you with really critical information related to your job search. So it comes out every Tuesday. It is specifically tailored for each class. And in there, you will have an action plan and tips for the week, things that you need to focus on most immediately. We'll highlight really important programs and events. And these can be both programs that we are running internally, as well as external programs that maybe are being run by law firms or government agencies or other organizations such as bar associations that we think would be really helpful to you. We'll also highlight hot jobs, things that maybe have upcoming deadlines, but things that we want to make sure have a real broad awareness around them. And then last, we will link to some helpful articles and resources in every one of these Tuesday emails. So again, this starting your first week at William & Mary, you'll start receiving your Tuesday email, usually sometime mid-afternoon on Tuesdays. Last but not least, I want to talk about our leadership and professional development course, which is something that we rolled out this year for the first time. It was delivered by the advisors in the Office of Career Services. It is a 1-credit pass-fail class that is mandatory for all of our 1Ls. And it's basically run once per month on a Friday. And what we focus on in this class are core competencies that are needed for success as an entry-level attorney. And this is the competencies, which I will show you in a moment, are competencies that we did a lot of research into. We spoke to a lot of experts, a lot of the professional development folks at various employers about what were some of the skills that they would like to see law schools further develop in their students that maybe they aren't paying as much attention to. And there also have been a number of very significant national studies that have identified core competencies that are needed for success. So as I mentioned, this is a class that is held once per month, so for each of 7 months. And these are the topics that we cover and the order in which we cover them. And we organize this very specifically based on where we thought 1Ls would be along the spectrum of that first year of law school. So we start out with a program on emotional intelligence, communication, and relationship building. And then we progress into self-assessment and self-direction. The self-assessment and self-direction class comes at the time that you're first starting to meet with an OCS advisor. So as we're working with you to help you identify the things that maybe you would like to do for 1L summer and beyond, we want to talk to you about the process of self-assessment and self-direction. We get into project management and productivity in our third class around the time that you're probably going to start outlining for your exams. Then when we come back in January, after you've gotten your first set of grades, we have a program focused on grit, resilience, and a growth mindset. We then move ahead into a program on cultural awareness. Then the sixth program, which is ethics and professionalism, is a program that's actually delivered by the Virginia State Bar Association. It's mandatory for all 1Ls throughout the state of Virginia. And they have practicing judges and lawyers come in and deliver a presentation on ethics and professionalism that is very interactive. And all of this culminates in our last class, which is focused on leadership, teamwork, and collaboration. That will be our last class held in April. And we anticipate that next year's curriculum for this class, or the ones that you'll all be experiencing, should be pretty similar to what you're seeing up here on the screen. So that's it. Well, I shouldn't say it. It's not it. One more slide. I mentioned earlier how important it is to build your network. I am a tremendous introvert, even though people in the building will never believe that because I am talking to people every day, all day long. But I am a serious introvert. And if you told me that the only way to network is for me to go to some event with 100 people I don't know and start having small talk, that's not going to work for me. But what I found is that there are other ways that I am very comfortable networking. And the one that seems to work best for me is LinkedIn. And it's something, if you are not using, I highly recommend that you start using. I think it's really a necessity in the legal profession if you want to be connecting with William and Mary Law alumni, undergraduate alumni, people who maybe just do the kind of work you're interested in doing. LinkedIn happens to be a really valuable tool. And I will do a presentation at some point during your 1L year on how best to use LinkedIn. We also have a print resource that I put together that talks about the best way to use it. And if you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can certainly look me up. One of the things you'll see that if you try to connect with me, LinkedIn does have the ability to personalize a message. So if you're in my profile and click on connect, and if they ask you to personalize a message, try and do so. So mention something that we talked about tonight that you found interesting or helpful as an way to introduce yourself to me, and I will gladly accept your connection on LinkedIn. So that's it in terms of my formal presentation. My contact information is up on the screen. So if after tonight's presentation you would like to reach out to me, you should absolutely feel free to do so. But now I'm going to turn things back over to Catherine and Michelle for any questions that may have come up during the course of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was so great. Even as a 2L, it was good to get a little refresher on everything we have to offer. It's so robust. So if anyone has any questions at this time, feel free to throw them in the chat or in the Q&A. Currently, we do have a couple questions. This looks like a great question for any of us to answer. It says, does William and Mary Law offer stipends for individuals who seek a government internship over the 1L summer? Dean, Andy, would you like to answer that, or would you like me or Michelle to take that one?
Sure, I can start off, and then if the two of you want to jump in, the answer is yes. We have a student-run organization called the Public Service Fund, PSF, and I hope all of you will get involved with it when you are here. It is probably the most important student organization that we have. Their sole mission is to help raise funds so that students who are going into non-paying public interest positions during 1L and 2L summer can receive a small stipend that can maybe help them meet living expenses. And with that, I'll turn it over, Catherine, Michelle, if there's anything else you'd like to add, but it's a phenomenal program and one that I wish everyone would support.
I'll pop in quick. I am both a member of PSF and also I received PSF funding last summer and applying again this summer because I am still pursuing public interest law. So both your 1L summer and your 2L summer, you're able to apply for funding if you're pursuing a government job or if you're pursuing public interest. And the application is really easy to follow. I really would recommend if you're coming to William & Mary to also join the club just because the activities are just also a really good time and it's a really good community.
Yeah, I will say I'm also a member of PSF and will be applying for funding this summer. So it's a pretty big thing for William & Mary, but it's a really great organization and really helps students out during the summer. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next question about how many graduates are typically employed in the DC area. That's a really good question.
Sure. So DC happens to be our second most populated area when it comes to our graduates. Virginia is number one. And I mentioned earlier that we're very much a national school in terms of our where our students come from and where they go. And in a typical year, only about a third of our students stay in Virginia. DC is our second largest market. And that number usually ranges at about 15%. In some cases, it's been as much as 20%. I think for our class of 22, it might be around 15, 16%, but a very sizable number of our students will go to DC.
Sorry, I was still muted. What is the average percentage of students from William & Mary that do end up going into big law after graduation?
Right, another great question. So big law, just for those of you who have heard big law mentioned or are maybe not familiar with big law, we define big law as any firm of 100 lawyers or more, which in some markets might be very big. In some markets, say like in New York, a 100 attorney firm might actually be considered mid-size or smaller firm, just because of the way the big firms sort of populate the New York City market. In a typical year, somewhere between 20 and 22% of our graduates will go into big law. For the class of 2022, that's a consistent number. We're at about 22.5%. But for our 3L class, the class that is just about to graduate, that number is 30%. And I think for the current 2L class, that percentage is probably closer to about 28%. So the last 2 years, the numbers have definitely gone up.
Could you give us some examples of federal level intern positions for 1L summer?
Sure. We've had students intern for summer in organizations like the Department of Justice. We've had them at the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Communications Commission, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Small Business Administration, the Government Accountability Office. So these are just some examples of where our students have spent 1L summer, and many of those organizations have also hired our graduates into full-time positions, either through their agency honors programs or through just their basic job searching process.
So one of the next questions is, how much is the PSF stipend? I am gonna say something quick, it does depend on the year. There is different allocations of money also for your applications. So each application has different sections and they're allotted different points. And so based on the points is how money is allocated. So there's no specific answer for each person, but they do range. And last year, I think the highest stipend was $4,800. So there is a lot of room there. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Dean and Dee.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on fundraising and a number of other sources, and it also depends on the number of applications that are received that can impact that. But the goal is to try and allocate as much as they can to as many students as possible.
I have another question here that would like to know about what career services can do to help diverse candidates apply for 1L summers in big law offices, as far as like the support they could receive specifically.
Sure. Thanks for that question, Catherine. So we work very extensively with students who come from diverse backgrounds, and we take a very broad approach in terms of how we what we consider to be diverse. And so, because what we want students to realize is that there are a broad number of categories that that employers will typically consider diverse. So that could be based on race or ethnicity. It could be based on gender, LGBTQ plus status, military veterans, first generation. Some employers also focus on socioeconomic diversity, and I'm not hitting all of the categories. We do a program at the very beginning of November for students who consider themselves diverse, to talk about all the various opportunities that are out there. And the reason we do it on November 1st is that the big firms will start their diversity pipeline hiring around December 1. We are participants with an organization called the Legal Council on, I always get the name right. It's LCLD. I know I'm going to get for some reason the name is just, I'm blanking on the name right now, but LCLD is the premier organization that works with all the law schools and corporate and law firm partners across the country to make available 1L diversity pipeline opportunities. And those opportunities will be with many of the biggest law firms in the country, but also many in-house legal departments across the country. Those applications typically open December 1. So we will host that program on November 1st so that students have at least a month available to them to start working on their materials. Many students will work with an OCS advisor because these applications typically will include what you would normally expect in an application: a cover letter, a resume, maybe a transcript or a writing sample. But more importantly, they often include a personal statement where you might be responding to very specific prompts related to diversity that a firm has posted. And so we will work with you on your diversity statement as well. And we will host panel discussions with students. And also we brought in some experts who will talk about best way to couch your personal statement to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. And that's for 1L summer. And there are a number of other programs. There's also a judicial internship opportunity program called JIOP that is sponsored by an organization called Just the Beginning that focuses on helping students from diverse backgrounds get positions with federal and state judges across the country. And then I mentioned a few minutes ago, the Southeast Minority Job Fair, which is really a 2L and 3L geared program.
There are a few questions here that are kind of around the same idea of, is there any resources or any networking, et cetera, that you recommend before their 1L year starts?
Sure. So I put the LinkedIn on the last slide specifically because I think that's a great way to get started. What I would do is I would start looking for William & Mary alumni who maybe are in geographic areas where you think you want to work. And very often for 1L summer, students will go home. It just may make more sense financially for students to go back home rather than stay in Williamsburg or in another market, particularly if they're in one of those government or public sector positions that aren't paying. But connecting to folks either in the market where you live or in the market you intend to be, or maybe even if there are alumni who practice the type of law that you have an interest in. So maybe you have an interest in employment law or family law or intellectual property. Doing some searches and on LinkedIn to see if you can identify some of those people would be really critical. Just drop them a line saying you're an incoming William & Mary student. You'd love to be able to connect with them and talk about their career or whatever it is. And one of the things I will say about William & Mary is that our alumni base is extraordinarily supportive. And they will help. And I'm not going to vouch that every single one of them will step up if you reach out to them. But I tell students all the time, if 10 to 20% of the people you reach out to respond favorably, that's a phenomenal percentage. It's not uncommon for students to say that more than half maybe even 3/4 of the William and Mary folks that they reach out to are responsive and helpful. So that's the kind of networking I would recommend over the course of the summer.
Yeah, I will definitely say I have cold LinkedIn William and Mary alumni who have immediately asked if I wanted to come to their office for the day to follow them around. So then I can't say enough nice things about the alumni here. And I agree, that's the best way to prepare. I didn't really know what a lawyer did before law school. So if I had done anything before 1L year, it would have been talking to more lawyers just to get an idea of kind of what that looks like. And then another great question we have is what percentage of William and Mary students go on to pursue a career in public interest?
Mm-hmm. That is a great question. If you go onto our website, under the Career Services tab, you will see a page that says Employment Outcomes. And you can see that we've posted for each of the last 4 years our ABA report. So you can see the split. And in a typical year, it's about a 50-50 split between private practice and public sector. And on the public sector, we're talking about federal, state, and local government agencies, judicial clerkships on the federal and state level, as well as individuals who have gone on to work with what we might view as traditional public service organizations like legal aid or specialty organizations that focus on a particular mission. So, for example, there are disability rights organizations, there are women's rights organizations, there are environmental organizations. So it's usually about a 50-50 split at William and Mary when you include the judicial clerkships in that pool.
Another good question we have here is, do you have any tips for students with previous work experience not in the legal field, and how to best leverage or promote their existing professional skills with future legal employers?
Sure, that's a fantastic question. And I want to address that from the standpoint of folks who have a lot of experience, but also for the students who might be coming straight from college right into law school, because I think it's important to address that as well. Every one of you is going to come to law school with a set of skills that it will be transferable to the practice of law. And it doesn't make a difference to me what you have done in the past, but once you start to realize the things that are really valuable in the minds of a legal employer, you realize that you have more skills and experiences than you may realize. For the folks who have several years of experience and are coming back into the law school, I would certainly emphasize maybe just having an understanding of the way the professional world works a little bit more than maybe somebody who might be coming fresh out of school. But also just think about the skills that you've developed that might be transferable to the practice of law. And the skills that I would emphasize, and this is true of even folks who maybe are coming straight out of college, research and writing and your analytical skills are going to be first and foremost the top three, because research, writing, and analysis will be at the core of anything you do, even if you're going to go into a transactional practice. Apart from that, problem-solving skills, communication skills, attention to detail, a tremendous sense of organization, high levels of empathy. Those are all things that are really important. The ability to work as well as a team. You don't even necessarily have to have led a team as much as it is you can work well within a team. But don't forget the problem-solving abilities, because each of us have solved problems in our own ways. And so for the students who might be coming straight, maybe from the K through JD students, just think about, I've spoken to students whose only experience may have been working retail at Target, or maybe they're working as a server at a restaurant. Well, think about that. You've got great problem solving skills. You have great customer service skills. You have the great ability to communicate. All of those things are going to be relevant to the practice of law. So each of you has things that you can bring to the table that will be valuable to a prospective employer for 1L year and beyond.
I'm just going to pop in again because I came in with 4 years of work experience. And so OCS, Office of Career Services, was really great about helping me craft my cover letter and my resume with how to apply my non-legal work experience. And so that's been something I've been able to leverage a lot throughout my time, and something that my career services dean really taught me how to apply, which was really great to see. And then another question, this is a really good one. Are there any on-campus networking events sponsored by student organizations during the school year? Or I guess by the school also?
The answer is yes, constantly. I'll give a shout out to our student organizations that are really terrific in bringing in speakers throughout the course of the year. And so, for example, our Student Intellectual Property Society, otherwise known as SIPS, will bring in speakers whose practice focuses on intellectual property. Our Business Law Society will bring in folks whose practices may be a little bit more transactional. Criminal Law Society will bring in the folks who do criminal law on both the prosecutorial side and the public defense side. And these programs take place throughout the course of the year. We got a program coming up that I've not yet started to publicize, but Michelle and Catherine, I hope you'll go to it. In the end of March, we have an alum coming in who specializes in appellate law. But what's really interesting, for those who want to take a look at this and are not familiar with it, just look up I'm sure everyone knows the website, The Onion, the parody site. Well, they are involved in a major First Amendment and constitutional lawsuit, and the attorney who's coming in, Steve Van Stemfort, is an alum, and he is attorney of record for The Onion in their amicus brief that they have filed on behalf of the plaintiff in this case. And he's going to come in and speak about his career in appellate law, but also about the the constitutional issues arising in that Onion case. Career services, we're scheduling programs throughout the course of the year as well to supplement what our student organizations are doing, because we want to make sure that you have the opportunities to connect with alumni. I mentioned a few minutes ago the 1L alumni mock interview program is one example. But this is the time of year where the big firms start to come in and do networking receptions. And this year we're hosting for the first time ever a Meet the Firms event in April to help our students who are interested in big law make some more personal one-on-one FaceTime connections with that cohort of employers.
I'm going to pop in quick here too with the 1L interview program. The alumni that I interviewed with, we ended up really clicking, and she gave me her phone number, and she still to this day gives me class recommendations and teachers I should reach out to, and she's connected me with other alumni. So that is a huge advantage of that program, and also just the different speakers we have on campus are always really fascinating.
Yep.
This is a good question. It's as an international student, are you still able to participate in the government and public interest program, or are there certain limitations?
Sure, the answer is yes. The main limitation is if an employer indicates that they are not able to hire international students. Where you're going to see that most obviously is with federal agencies. Some federal agencies may take on international students if they are in unpaid positions. For paid positions, they cannot bring in anyone that's not a citizen. Other organizations tend to look more favorably, I would say less strictly, but more favorably when it comes to international students. Certainly public interest organizations really don't have any limitation, but it really just depends on the employer. They might state in their posting that they're not accepting international students in their programs, but there are plenty of opportunities that are out there for international students.
Great. Would you mind talking a little bit about externships that are available throughout the year as opposed to 1L summer jobs?
Sure, and thanks, Catherine. That's another great question. So our externship program, you become eligible for an externship beginning with 1L summer, but most students do not do externships during the summer because it is still course credit and you have to pay for that credit, and it doesn't roll up into federal loans during the course of the summer. But what you will see is students will start doing externships in the fall of their 2L year. And I highly recommend, if you have an opportunity to do an externship or a clinic every semester, the fall and spring of both the 2L and 3L year, I would, because experience really matters. It's great that you're learning the doctrinal law in the classes that you're taking, but there's no substitute for practice and experience and getting out there. And that's what really matters to employers. So the externship program is a terrific one. You can do during the semester an externship anywhere from 1 to 3 credits. And each credit is based on working 40 hours for the host organization. So for a typical 3-credit externship, you would work 120 hours for your host over a 14-week semester. And in most cases, it's very rare that there's an upper level class taught on a Friday. So typically our students will do their externships on Friday and usually a half or a full day at some other point during the week. The externship, they have a associated class that I think meets twice a semester. I think it's twice a semester. And then there are reflection papers that you have to write in connection with the class. And what the externship is just a heightened level of supervision and feedback on the part of the employer so that they're making this as much of an academic experience as possible. But you could pretty much create an externship with just about any employer that is willing to abide by the law school's terms and conditions. And so maybe you know exactly what you want to do. Let's just say, for example, you want to be a public defender. And so you want to go and get as much externship or internship experience. You'll do an externship maybe in the fall semester, maybe for the federal defender, or maybe for the local state public defender offices. Or maybe you don't know exactly what it is you want to do, but you want to try something on and see if it's a fit. So maybe working for a local law firm that does more transactional work, or another firm that maybe does a little bit more litigation. So there are definitely opportunities for our students to dip their toes in the water for things that they're not familiar with, or try something that they know they will never practice just to say that they did it, or to enhance something that you already know you want to do. But those opportunities are out there. Externships are not graded. And the one thing you just have to know is that 75% of your credits at William & Mary must be graded credits. So that gives you a lot of room. It gives you, I think, 21 credits that you can play around with in terms of clinics, externships, and other classes that are not graded.
I have to add on, I'm currently externing with the federal magistrate judge in Richmond, and it's been a really wonderful experience. And I'm currently simultaneously taking the class Section 1983, and I'm really able to see how that's playing into real life scenarios in my externship, which I think is a viewpoint you don't get unless you go out and extern. So I would really recommend it. And especially in Williamsburg, we have the advantage of being able to go north to Richmond or south to Norfolk, Newport News. There's a ton of areas, not just Williamsburg, that you really can commute to.
Right.
So I would really recommend.
Yeah. And for those students who are here tonight that are thinking that they might want to clerk for a federal state judge after graduation, you may not get a judicial internship for your 1L summer, but you could pursue that as an externship during 2L or 3L year and get that experience on your resume. Will make you a much stronger candidate for a clerkship after graduation.
This question specifically asks about JAG recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
Do they come to events and hiring events at William & Mary, or do you have to independently?
Sure. That's a great question, Michelle. We are one of the top schools in the country for students who would like to go into JAG service. We have some students who come here as what's under what's called the funded legal education program, who are already military officers who are then coming to law school. But we have many other students who come here with civilian backgrounds who decide that they want to go into JAG. We're considered one of the top schools. I think in 2016, we had the highest raw number of graduates go into JAG service of any school in the country. There's a publication called Military Friendly Magazine. A couple of years ago, we were voted the top graduate school of all graduate schools, not just law schools, in the country for being the most military friendly school. And I think 2 other years in the last 5, we've been number 2 in that list. So we've had students who go into all the branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and Coast Guard. And those recruiters do come on campus. Our dean, Den Spencer, is an Army Reserve JAG, and he handles appellate matters for Army JAG. And other members of our faculty are also former JAG officers, and that can work with our students. One of my colleagues in OCS, George Podolin, is a former naval officer. This was before law school, so he was not JAG, but he's got tremendous familiarity with all the JAG requirements and works with a lot of our students who are interested in going into JAG.
And could you clarify whether or not international students are eligible for JAG service?
They are not, because that's federal government. So that we have federal service positions. So international students unfortunately would not be eligible for that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just wanted to clarify that point really quick. Another thing we have a couple questions about is the federal clerkship
Mhm.
process and like how William and Mary stacks up competitively against other schools and kind of what that process is like for our students.
Sure. Twice in the last 5 years, we were in the top 15 in the country for the percentage of our graduates who went into federal clerkships. And typically the percentage of our graduates who go into federal clerkships has ranged between 5 and 9%, high 9 being the high, those 2 years that we were in top 15, we're usually about 6 or 7%. And to put that into context, only 1,200 students annually will get federal clerkships, or maybe slightly above that. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of judges prefer to now hire graduates who have a few years of experience, and we've started to see that become a more commonplace thing. So in a typical year, I would say 12 to 15 graduates will get federal clerkships. They are among the most competitive positions that are out there. And we start working with our students the very beginning of their 2L year. Those who are interested in federal clerkships, we run information sessions, we do one-on-one meetings. We work very extensively with the local federal judges in Richmond and Norfolk to make sure that we know when they're hiring and getting our students' applications in front of them, but also to make sure that you're aware of the timing and the process as early as possible so that you can get applications out and be the most competitive student you can. One thing we advise all students, if you're interested in a federal clerkship, is to think very broadly from a geographic standpoint and don't limit yourself to certain specific areas of the country. The more flexible you are, you increase your chances. And again, with only 1,200 students per year getting federal clerkships, you can see it's very, very competitive, but being willing to go to another part of the country can be really advantageous.
So another question we have is relating to being research assistants.
Mhm.
So this person is asking if you can research for other law schools or if only William and Mary.
If you can certainly reach out to faculty at other law schools, but the likelihood is that they're going to hire students from their own school. So I don't think that I've ever seen anyone at William and Mary serving as a faculty research assistant for a faculty member at another law school. And I would say that's probably the same at other schools. There are plenty of research assistant positions available with our faculty. It could just be a summer research assistant position, but we have students who will serve as research assistants throughout the course of the school year on a variety of different topics. So if you have an interest in a particular area of law and you want to maybe work for the faculty who specializes in that, those are definitely things that we want you to pursue. Or maybe you just want to get good experience in terms of your researching and your writing. You can just work for pretty much any member of the faculty. But it would be very unlikely that you would be doing research for anyone other than a William and Mary faculty member if you're a student at William and Mary.
Michelle and I both researched last summer for professors, and I think we both really enjoyed our time with them. But also another thing I think that's super important about William and Mary is the professors are also so willing to work with you and so willing to, they're just very welcoming. And we both had great experiences with our professors. And I think from what I can tell, everyone has had a really nice experience kind of doing that research, which is, it's really important to get that research practice like under your belt.
Yeah, Catherine, if I can ask you and Michelle to maybe talk a little bit more about those experiences, and who you're working with and why you chose to work with those faculty.
Yeah, I will go ahead and start, Michelle, since I'm already talking. We both worked with our 1L crim law professors, but we had different professors. So I worked on criminal conspiracy, and so I was helping my 1L professor update his textbook. So it's pretty straightforward work. I just kind of read a lot of case law and referred the case law to him. We would have weekly check-ins where he really just wanted to hear about how my summer was going, but also we do a little talking about how my research was going. And there are like 3 other students also researching with him. And I did that for about 40 hours a week for half my summer last summer. So it was a really good experience.
So I did mine. I had a full-time job with legal aid, and then I worked 10 hours part-time each week as a research assistant as well. And I was with Professor Nancy Combs. And coming into law school, I was really interested in the international field, but also knew I was interested in public interest. So I wanted to try and get a little bit of both of those experiences during my 1L to really help cultivate my search for my 2L job summer. And so for my research, I looked at international human rights and international criminal law for Professor Combs. So especially we looked at, I focused on writing memos regarding international coups, the International Criminal Court, ICJ. I looked at some UN proposals. And then I also looked at CEDAW, which is an international international treaty, sorry, regarding human and specifically women's rights. And so that was really fascinating for me and helped shape what I could be doing if I decided to go into international law. Well, also I was having the experience of working in a public interest office too with legal aid. So I did get to see a little bit of both.
It's also really great to make those connections with our professors because they all know everybody in the legal field, it feels like. So it's really cool to be like, oh yeah, like I worked on like that textbook that so many people use, or he knows someone and everyone. So it's really nice to be able to make those connections too.
Right. And
Yeah.
they can, and oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
Oh no, I was just gonna say also Professor Combs wrote me every single letter of recommendation this year. And that has been very helpful. And I'm currently taking international criminal law with her too. And it's funny, before one of our classes, a topic I had researched, we were discussing that day in class. And so her and I had a conversation before and after class regarding how my research was playing in to what we were learning. And so that relationship is something that has been really important to me in law school. And it's something that I hope to continue. She's also, if you end up going to William & Mary, she worked for the Criminal Tribunal in The Hague. So she is just a very phenomenal person to begin with.
And you mentioned what I was going to mention, Michelle, which is letters of recommendation. Working with faculty can be really helpful, especially if you think you want to apply for a clerkship with a judge after graduation. You're going to need letters of recommendation, and faculty letters are preferred. So building those relationships with faculty are really important. Michelle and Catherine, I actually want to turn this back to you for a moment. If you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about your summer experiences, both 1L summer and 2L summers. And Catherine, you had mentioned you'd spent 40 hours a week in your research assistant position, but if you want to just bring things forward a little bit for everybody in the group.
Yeah, so I did that. My first half of the summer, I was 40 hours a week with Professor Marcus doing research for him, which is a lot of hours of research a week, I will say. And then the second half of my summer, I did spend also at a legal aid. I actually went to Charleston, South Carolina, so I didn't use any of the resources the school provides. I had a geographic idea in mind, and I did a Google search. And yeah, so that's how I got my summer job. I had a really great experience working with OCS to kind of get to where I wanted to be with that position and talking through it. And then like, you can't beat that hands-on experience. It really puts everything into perspective, especially coming back your 2L year. I think that's the most frustrating thing you hear 1L year is the older students will be like, it will all make sense after you go to a legal job. And it's so true. It's like, oh, I know why I'm learning this now. Coming up for my 2L summer, I actually was normal and got my job through GPIP, which is the government public interest interview program we were speaking of earlier. I sent out, I think, 10 applications. I did 6 or 7 interviews, and I got offers that day, which is just like really overwhelming, but also I think that speaks to how well respected William & Mary is as an institution, and how well they do at helping us get jobs. So I will be at a public defense office in Virginia this summer. So I'm really excited to do that. And probably will be researching because that's just a lot of fun. So
Catherine and I are flipped a little bit. I got my 1L job through a William & Mary connection, and then my 2L job I found. But for 1L, I worked at the legal aid office in Williamsburg, and the senior attorney there is actually an adjunct professor at William and Mary, and he runs 2 clinics as well as a legal practice, legal skills class. And so my 1L writing professor, Professor Barna, had worked for the clinics and had talked about her experience in class, and I had become very fascinated by them. So I asked if there was any way she could connect me with Professor Cunningham, who is the senior attorney at the legal aid office, and she sent an email. And right then, Professor Cunningham offered me the job, which was a little crazy, but it ended up being a really great experience. And I worked really closely, especially with interpersonal violence is what I focused on this summer. And it really helped shape where and what I wanted to do for my 2L summer. And so this coming summer, I'm working in Chicago at the Cook County Public Guardian Office. And so they are direct advocates for children who've experienced abuse or neglect. And so because of that 1L experience, I knew that I wanted to continue to focus on that field. I just shifted a little bit to children versus adults, but it's that experience has really shaped a lot of what I want to do, and the hands-on experience and working with clients, especially legal aid offices. Catherine can attest to. There's so many clients that you really get to have a lot of hands-on experience, and you're already drafting memos, you're already doing a ton of things that really help shape what you want. I think what you want out of your next, what you like and what you don't like, it becomes very clear. And working with clients was something that I really enjoyed. And so I wanted to make sure that that was a big part of my 2L summer experience.
I think another thing that sets William and Mary apart from other schools is that I know both me and Michelle did this, was talk to students that were 2Ls and 3Ls, or 3Ls now, or alumni that had the summer jobs we were kind of interested in. Everyone at William and Mary, like all the students, are willing to tell you like the honest truth about their positions, and having that ability to like having those resources to be like, hey, you worked for this employer, what did you think of them, or getting advice for an interview. I think also something that really helps is someone, even if the person I know didn't work for them, they'll be like, oh, I think my friend worked for them, like, and immediately set you up with somebody, which getting that kind of like inside scoop is so helpful when there's so many different jobs you could possibly take for your summers.
Also, sorry, that reminds me one more thing. Additionally, even just location, especially if you maybe are not familiar with the area. I've never been to Chicago, and I reached out to one of my good friends who graduated last year, and she offered me her couch to stay on. She already sent me a letter, like a huge list of recommendations for the summer. So it's definitely, there is a really big community that does want to support you.
Thank you both for sharing.
Do you have any other questions as far as like the student perspective you'd like us to address, Dean Endy?
No, I think that was a good start, and I'm sure there might be other questions that pop up, but I really wanted the folks who are here to hear about what you're doing for the summer, and also the fact that I think it's important that each of you is going to have a real huge impact on the communities that you're working with, and that is when we talk about what a citizen lawyer at William and Mary is. It's about having impact in our communities and making a difference, and the two of you are definitely going to be doing that. So thank you.
So kind. We do have an interesting question here, I think, is about any recommended reading for 1Ls as far as like navigating the legal profession. And I've read a really good book called I think it's 24 Hours with a Lawyer. Is that what, Michelle, did you read it as well, or was that just me?
You recommended it to me, but I haven't read it.
It's 24 Hours with a Lawyer. That's a good book. It is what it says it is. It just goes around with different lawyers and kind of talks to you about their day, but I'm sure Dean Endy has more.
I will tell you that I think the best thing you can do when you get into law school is just go in with an open mind and no preconceived notions, because whatever you hear about it from others, it may not match your reality. And everybody adjusts to law school in very different ways and at very different times. So you can't go in with a set of expectation that you're going to know everything on day one, because you won't. And you probably won't know anything, in that first month. but you will be learning. And I think just going in with as much of an open mind. I think, rather than even a reading list, I think, Catherine, I've not read that book, but I think 24 Hours with a Lawyer is a great way to sort of phrase, the networking piece or frame the networking piece, in that what you're really looking to do is, if you're not sure what you want to do, talk to somebody about what their day-to-day looks like, and find out, if this is what a typical day-to-day looks like in this particular practice, is that something that excites you, or is that something that makes you want to go running in the opposite direction? Because it's as important to figure out what you don't want as what you do want. So whether it's reading a book like 24 Hours with a Lawyer, or just speaking to people about their day-to-day or their week-to-week, those are the kind of things that you can be doing now that could really help you figure out what it is you think you want to do when you end up going to law school.
I'm definitely a reader, so that's like, and I was not ready to network before I got to law school, so I totally understand that question. And it's called 24 Hours with 24 Lawyers. So if you're looking for that book, I do recommend it. It's been passed around our friend group, I think. So we found it super helpful.
Also, another one that I know is highly recommended in our friend group is Getting to Maybe, is I think what it's called. And it really helps format how to think about both sides, is what I've heard. I have personally haven't read it, so I can't say too much, but quite a few of my friends have recommended it. And then Dean Indy, there is another question about if there's any specific advising available to international students.
Sure. So I'm getting at this at a sort of roundabout way unnecessarily. The advising that we give to international students is in large part going to be very similar to the advice or advising that we'd be giving to JDs from the US, in terms of understanding what the resources available are, what the opportunities available are, and just focusing on strategy and planning. But above and beyond that, we also have to recognize that international students have a number of different hurdles that they have to overcome in terms of work authorization. And so we will work with them and also with the Reeves Center for International Students on understanding their CPT requirements, the curricular practical training, as well as understanding the OPT, the postgraduate requirements. And so we will, again, the advising is still very consistent, but it has that added layer of making sure that students understand how CPT and potentially OPT will factor into their overall job search strategy.
Great. And would you mind speaking a little bit about the loan repayment assistance program, if you know anything about that for public service?
Sure. I'm not directly involved with that program, so I don't want to say too much. But if you go to our website and you just look up LRAP or Loan Repayment Assistance Program, you'll find information about that. Dean Kaplan, Rob Kaplan, who oversees our externship program and is also a member of our faculty in our legal writing program, oversees the LRAP program. And so that is broadcast out to graduates who are in public service positions on an annual basis. So particularly those who are newly eligible for LRAP, to make sure that they have access to the application and all the resources that we make available so they can apply on a timely fashion. I don't want to speak too much more about it simply because I'm not involved with that process. But if you go onto our website, you should be able to find some basic information, and you can always reach out to Dean Kaplan for more information if you'd like it.
Great. Those are all the questions that we had in the queue. So if anyone has any last minute questions, feel free to just throw them in the Q&A and we're happy to answer those. But I think what Michelle and I can do is also, I know you had your information up, Dean Indy, but Michelle and I can put our email addresses in the webinar chat. And so if anyone has any questions at all, you can send either of us an email, and we would be happy to chat with you more about anything related to William and Mary, whether that has to do with career services or what it's like to be a William and Mary law student, anything else. So we would be more than happy to talk to you all about that. But if no one has any other questions, Dean Indy, do you have anything else to add for us tonight?
No, I just want to say thank you, Catherine and Michelle, for hosting this and for moderating the discussion. And to all of you who are here and gave us your time on a Sunday evening, you're very much appreciated. And we all look forward to hopefully seeing you here in August.
Absolutely. So we have extended our application deadline to March 15th. If anyone is still thinking about applying for us, you do receive a waiver for participating in our panel tonight. So if you need help with that, you can send us an email. You can email me or Michelle or Dinendi. I believe the email to get the waiver is lawamd@wm.edu. But you can find the law admissions online just through a Google search. And if you've already applied and been accepted students weekend is coming up in like 2 weeks. Michelle and I will both be there. We're super excited about it. So we hope to see you there too if you've been accepted.
I also just wanted to say a quick thing. Feel free to reach out with any questions of any kind. They're definitely not limited to our experience regarding work. We also will talk about being a student in William & Mary clubs, etc. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Night, everyone.